As you can tell, this is still Patriot Act Quarantine Edition. Now look, when I first heard we were going into lockdown, I panicked. I ran to the store, I hoarded toilet paper, Purell, and batteries. So many batteries. I really thought the apocalypse would involve more flashlights. But some people had a different idea.
It's not water, it's not canned goods, it's not toilet paper, it's marijuana.
Panic buying at cannabis dispensaries. Look at the long lines.
Some long lines last night.
Lines out the door here as well.
I just decided to stock up on the weed just in case the guys close down.
You got to prepare for the worst, you know?
I smoke so much pot, the Zigzag Man has a tattoo of me on his arm.
Wait, is that Joe Biden? Only he would say Zigzag Man. Now, as lockdown spread in March, pot use hit record highs, and a lot of people are using marijuana to get through this difficult time, which is why tonight I'm talking about weed. And I know this isn't the most pressing issue, but I want to talk about it for the same reason a lot of people want to smoke it. We all need a break. And yes, I know I have big narc energy. I don't do drugs, so I'm gonna try to not embarrass myself talking about them. Luckily, the bar is pretty low.
We call this magic bus the Kenna bus. Get it? Whoa!
Hundreds of people smoking weed.
Skunk. Yeah. The devil's lettuce. Righteous bush.
Everybody needs a beautiful hand-blown bomb.
Rolling up a doobie. Does anyone still call it a doobie?
The groups in our school, it was like the swelts and the creamies and the dirties and the jocks. And the dirties were the ones who did pot.
Wait, the creamies and the dirties? Megan's like, you guys remember high school? Prom, chem, race wars? And then the black woman in the front row is just like, okay, this took a left turn, Megan. Now, weed is still federally illegal. But right now, there are 31 states allowing dispensaries to stay open even as the country shuts down, with many calling them essential businesses. So according to the government, weed is illegal, but also necessary. It's the waterboarding of drugs. Most Americans actually already live in a state that allows weed in some form, which means the legal weed industry is exploding. Before the coronavirus, estimates said it'd be worth up to $19 billion this year and $30 billion by 2023. With that much money, you could buy the Mets 13 times or buy enough weed to make baseball entertaining. Now look, if you're a baseball fan, I truly don't give a fuck. The only exciting thing that's ever happened in baseball was when Randy Johnson pitched a ball and a bird exploded. That's it. If they don't kill a bird every game, I'm not interested. We're obviously way past the idea of if we should legalize weed. It is here. But we haven't talked enough about how to legalize it because we are messing it up. Legal marijuana is rigged. And it's about to get worse. Now, to be fair, our weed laws have always been messed up. We don't have time for the full history, but TLDR, it's pretty racist. It started in the 1930s when government officials said stuff like, reefer makes darkies think they're as good as white men. Obviously, dude went to high school with Megan. They were both voted most likely to insist the Civil War was about states' rights. Then Nixon started the war on drugs and shit got even more racist. Black communities were targeted, and today, Black people make up just 13% of America, but 40% of people imprisoned for drug crimes. So you would think legalization should benefit minority communities the most. But it's actually benefiting people like this.
Guess what? We're selling legal weed.
Do I call it a pot store or a marijuana store?
You can call it whatever you want. I call it the future. There's no bars on the windows. There's no guy with a gun at the front.
I want to convert every Chardonnay mom to replace Chardonnay with pot.
Ugh. He says Chardonnay moms like he just cleared it from his browser history. This is Adam Bierman, co-founder of the weed company MedMen. Now, you've probably heard of him. And this is Bierman's business philosophy.
Your song is Always Lose Yourself.
That is the soundtrack to my life. There's another Eminem, well, I don't know how personal we're gonna get. The last scene in 8 Mile, he starts the battle, and he starts it with, you know, something like, I am white. I do live in a trailer park with my mom.
Right.
And by the time he was done, the guy had nothing to say. In more and more instances, I want to say, yeah, I am all those things.
He's actually none of those things. This is true. He grew up in San Diego, he went to USC, and his favorite TV show is The West Wing. Bro, you know what I realized? You're not 8 Mile. You're fucking Lady Bird. And if I have to stand here and listen to you pretend to be from Detroit any longer, I'm gonna go chug a gallon of their water. Bierman is still on the board at MedMen, but he recently stepped down as CEO, and you might be wondering why. It could be because he paid himself millions before the company was profitable, or because their stock tanked, or because he allegedly called an LA City councilman a midget Negro. But that can't be it. I mean, who would call a governing official that name? That's insane.
Now I have to go home and I have to explain to my Latina wife and my Spanish-speaking kids why I'm being called a racist at work, right?
I'm surprised he didn't go with, I can't be racist. My wife and kids are midget Negroes. Now, he denies he ever said that, but Bierman actually isn't the worst person to profit off legal weed.
With me now, former Speaker of the House, John Boehner. Now, you're all in on cannabis.
I'm all in. This is the time to go all in on cannabis. Cannabis is here to stay, and this industry is only getting bigger. And as I said, I'm all in on cannabis.
The most shocking part of this isn't that John Boehner likes weed. It's that John Boehner talks like a manga character. He's like, I'm John Boehner, and I'm all in on cannabis. Now let's talk for the next 10 episodes, then we'll finally fight! That clip was from an online seminar for weed investors that Boehner hosted. He's on the board of a company called Acreage Holdings, which means he's in line to make millions off of legal marijuana, even though for years, Boehner fought to keep it illegal, which may sound super hypocritical. But don't worry, Boehner's got an airtight defense. Just listen to what NPR Austin Powers asks him.
When you were a politician, you said you were unalterably opposed to legalization. One of the things I wanted to ask you is what harm has been done by the fact that we didn't legalize it back then?
Oh, I don't know if there's any harm that's been done.
There was people getting arrested, there were people getting thrown in jail. I mean, that counts, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but that was under a different set of rules at a different time.
A different time? Dude, you left office 5 years ago. You can't do the different time thing. That's for when you take Grandpa to P.F. Chang's. You're like, hey, we're really sorry he called the waitress a dumpling geisha. He's from a different time. Acreage is one of the biggest weed companies in America, and before the pandemic, it was in 19 states and expanding fast. Part of that is demand, but another part is that states are building systems that are good for giant weed companies and bad for almost everyone else. And one of the main ways they do that is through licenses. In the weed business, you need a license to literally do anything, and a lot of states make it easier for big business to get licensed. Take California, America's sideburn. After they legalized recreational weed in 2016, policymakers wanted to put a 1-acre limit on licenses for weed farmers until 2023 to help small farmers and the little guy rein in big companies. But then, big marijuana spent $1.6 million lobbying, and things changed.
Small pot farmers in California say the state is not standing by its promise to protect them.
There are people who are stacking 10s to close to 100 1-acre cultivation permits.
We found one company got 200 permits, enough to grow on 46 acres.
Yeah, of course you found them. They grew a drug forest. Big companies were supposed to be limited, but some have stacked hundreds of licenses, which has small farmers struggling to keep up.
New industrial-scale rivals have economies of scale that lower their costs. So how can a small legal grower like Swami possibly compete? Branding. Swami Chaitanya announces his presence to Ganesh, Hindu god of, among other things, good luck, who presides over the crops Swami grows to produce Swami Select, his patented marijuana brand.
Aw, come on. Indian culture isn't for selling weed. It's for selling Coldplay. But okay, I'll bite. Who is this Swami?
Swami, in prior life, William Winans, a 60s Wesleyan grad, filmmaker, San Francisco hippie, who spent 10 years in India.
Wait. White people are pretending to be Indian to sell drugs? Dude, honestly, I'm proud. You guys, we got our own Rachel Dolezal. Raj Dolezal. But as bad as California is for small weed businesses, there's a state that's even worse. Florida, America's uvula. In Florida, this is how they describe the legal weed industry.
It's a cartel. It's a cartel of license holders.
They created a cartel, essentially.
You have an industry allowing for businesses to operate like cartels.
I feel like every business in Florida is a cartel. Pottery Barn, cartel. Baby Gap, cartel. Curves Fitness, cartel. Dude, admit it, Pablo had some thickums. That's the other thing that he hid from the DEA. That booty. Florida legalized medical marijuana in 2016 under then Governor Rick Scott. But the state gives out very few operating licenses, which makes things cutthroat and expensive. One license in Florida sold for $55 million. And to even qualify for a license, businesses have to have vertical integration, which means you control the entire process. That means if you're in Florida, you're in charge of setting up a farm, growing and harvesting the weed, processing the weed, distributing the weed, and operating the stores that sell the weed. And some of you guys are thinking, whatever, bro, that's just capitalism 101. Just don't smoke my weed, play my Xbox, or eat my Funyun casserole. But this isn't just capitalism in the invisible hand. This is a demented thumb saying if you can't afford to do every single step, you can't even play the game. You're either flush with cash or you're out. So if you're thinking, hey, me and my bros from high school, we're gonna go to Miami, we're gonna set up a dispensary and make money. No, you're not. 5 companies now own 65% of Florida's weed business. They are hogging all the weed, kind of like you, Caleb. Caleb passed that shit. Who raised you? 10 other states also require vertical integration for medical marijuana. Across the country, big companies with major capital run the table because they can vertically integrate and snag licenses in multiple states. Just look at Boehner's company, Acreage, right? They're one of the largest vertically integrated companies in the United States. And as of last year, they held licenses in more states than any other company, which made them super valuable.
Canopy Growth will acquire a marijuana growing operation called Acreage Holdings, and they will pay close to $4 billion for it. You're close to $4 billion?
Yeah.
Whoa, I mean,
well, so what Acreage...
how much pot do they grow?
Why does it feel like every day Stu Varney is blown away by a different number? He's like, whoa, 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 4 billion. I'm still reeling from 37 yesterday. Now, the deal has already made Acreage shareholders like Boehner $300 million. And this is what the industry is now. A few multi-state operators with lots of licenses in lots of states raking it in. And it's hard to not notice a pattern.
When you look around that cannabis industry as an African-American woman, what do you see? White men. White men. White men. White men.
Hold on. That's not fair to John Boehner. He's more of a burnt sienna. I'm serious. We did this. We went on the Benjamin Moore Color Match app, and he is somewhere between a cottage red and a rustic brick. But she's right. According to one survey, out of all legal marijuana businesses, 81% are white-owned, Swami-owned, and 4% are black-owned. And there's a reason for that. The war on drugs never ended. Today, white and black people use weed at roughly the same rate, but black people are almost 4 times more likely to get arrested for it. In Montana, they are almost 10 times more likely to get arrested, which is really bad for the one black dude in Montana. Clarence, if you're watching this, be careful. Even after you've done your time, old drug charges can haunt you.
What's been the impact of getting caught up in a criminal justice system on those charges at that age?
You will never get a job. You'll never be able to live the way you want to live. Your background is always going to come back.
If you have a drug record, it can be almost impossible to get a job, even in the weed business. Do you understand? That means employers are like, oh, you sold weed? Sorry, we're professionals here at dabkingsforlife.com. Some states are trying to fix that through social equity programs, which help people hurt by the war on drugs break into the industry. But they aren't always effective. Massachusetts started one 3 years ago. Now, guess how many black-owned retail dispensaries they have right now? 1 in the whole state. So I had to sit down with the owners back when I was still allowed to sit down with people.
So, guys, tell me, where are we sitting right now?
We are in Pure Oasis, soon to be Boston's first recreational dispensary, the first economic empowerment-owned dispensary in Massachusetts, and also the first minority-owned cannabis dispensary on the East Coast.
So when this place opens, this will be the very first time pot is sold in Boston.
That's so amazing. Man, I can't wait for all those Boston weed strains. Purple Harvard, Jamaican Affleck, Strawberry Busing Riot. These are the owners of Pure Oasis, Kobe and Kevin. And I wanted to ask them how they feel about equity programs.
Would you say equity programs are effective?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that the success of an equity program hinges upon other things, but I think by and large, if there was no equity program, Kobe and I may not be sitting before you today.
Has the execution of the equity programs matched their intent?
No.
I would agree with no. What this needs in order for people to be successful are a list of wraparound services. Access to capital, legal,
taxes,
tax help.
Technical assistance.
Technical assistance, okay. So for this to be fair, it has to provide reach-around services.
Wraparound services.
It provides equity capital, technical services.
Yep, exactly.
Pleasure, joy, a release that feels good.
No. Wraparound.
Wraparound, different.
Wraparound, reach around. You say tomato, I say pleasure that tomato. Good equity programs do all of those things. Plus, they help people get licenses. The program in Massachusetts actually helped Kobe and Kevin move up the list and get theirs faster. But since everyone wants a license, once you have one, you can become a target for big investors.
What did these out-of-state investors really want from you?
They wanted control of our company.
But really, what does that mean?
They wanted to loan us money to really build the operation. And in a nutshell, the conversations for us felt very predatory and almost like loan sharking. This is our company. When they walked into the room, they acknowledged that it was our company. But as the night progressed, it became clear that they wanted to take our company and then make us employees. That was insulting.
I don't see what's so offensive here. Cannabis is a prop, okay? These VCs have come in and asked you to share crop. White dudes are coming up to two black men saying, hey, share crop.
And then the VCs could help structure the company in a new way. It'd be kind of like a Reconstruction era. I don't know, this just seems like a simple black and white issue to me. Big companies use equity programs to get control of more licenses. This is a huge loophole, and big marijuana is walking right through. Last year, a company called Harvest of Ohio claimed a black woman was their majority owner when their CEO was actually a white dude named Steve White. That name is whiter than a Nalgene clipped onto a carry-on with a carabiner. Have you ever seen a black person own this? Now, Harvest says they didn't do anything wrong, but this begs the question, is it worth it? This is a racial and economic issue. If we're just gonna make the rich richer, freeze out small business and the little guy, and ignore victims of the war on drugs, should we legalize weed at all? This isn't a hypothetical question. Last year, New York delayed legalization in part because it didn't do enough for racial justice. And Ohio had a super bizarre fight about legalization. In 2015, a group called Responsible Ohio started a legalization campaign with one surprising spokesman.
I'm Nick Lachey. Ohio is my home, and I care very deeply about the people here.
Wait, Nick Lachey? The co-host of Love is Blind? The former lead singer of 98 Degrees? You guys remember 98 Degrees, the clearance rack version of NSYNC. If the weed business gets any wider, every weed menu will start including shakshuka. Now, Nick Lachey wasn't just promoting legalization out of the goodness of his 98 Degrees heart. He had another motive.
Critics argue that the ad fails to mention Lachey's stake as an investor.
The constitutional amendment would give exclusive rights to all of the marijuana grown and sold at 1,100 stores in the Buckeye State to just 10 groups. One is Lachey's.
Lachey wanted a system rigged for just 10 growers, including himself. That is so messed up. This is what the show has come to. When we first started, I was getting into beefs with international dictators. Now I'm like, we must stop the lead singer of 98 Degrees. Lachey actually wasn't the only celeb involved.
TV and music star Nick Lachey, NFL player Frosty Rucker, fashion designer Nanette Lepore, and even President William Taft's great-great-grandnephews have financial stakes in the game.
This is President William Howard Taft's great-great-grandnephew, Dudley Taft. This is a real person. He looks like a guy who plays guitar in a band named after himself because he fucking does.
I'ma take my cell phone
This is what all rock and roll sounds like to me. Just a bearded redneck shouting like a Michigan protester. You hear Metallica, I hear, "Open the Foot Locker, man!" Now, the people of Ohio realized what was happening and voted down the Lachey-Taft drug cartel. Let me make something clear. I'm not saying legalization is bad. Smoke weed, hotbox your face mask, but support for legalization shouldn't be automatic. We need to look into how it works and who it works for. Even though sales are up in some places, COVID is still hurting the industry, especially small businesses. I caught up with Kobe and Kevin to see how they're doing right now with all of this. They had to shut down, they had to lay off their employees, and because weed is still federally illegal, they can't get any federal loans. Now, luckily, they say they have enough cash for now, but they said other small businesses like theirs might not survive. This is what pisses me off the most. This is yet another industry where a small group of people at the top hoard all the profits, and the little guy has no chance. Before COVID, 12 more states were planning to vote on some form of legalization this year. Now, a lot of them have put those plans on hold, which I think could be a good thing. It gives us a chance to step back and look at what these laws are really doing. Because as a rustic brick once said,
this is the time to go all in on cannabis.
But only if all of us get to.